Good morning. Now, will you just gather as close as possible in case my voice doesn't reach, because the amplifier isn't on, and we might as well be friendly even in this nice, beautiful room. Oh, that's good. That's better. That's better. Now, let's have fun. All right, let us, you see now we have a short time left, so we want to get all of the questions answered that we possibly can. Can we have the spirit of truth before we know the letter of truth, and how will we know it? Yes, there are people, many, many people on earth who never know the letter of truth. Yet they have the spirit of truth. They have the actual consciousness. They have the actual awareness of it. You may be assured of this, that every mystic, and by that I mean every religious revelator who has ever lived, has had the spirit of truth before they had the letter of truth. They had the spirit, they knew the what and the why and the wherefore, they had the feel, but they did not know it in such a way as to voice it or express it or teach it. The spirit with the born mystic comes before a knowledge of the letter. Those who are not born, who do not bring with them the spiritual sense of existence, learn it through the letter and acquire it through the study, the practice, and the meditation. Now, the deepest part of acquiring the spirit of truth is through the meditation. Remember that studying the letter in and of itself will not do it, because studying the letter is all in the realm of the mind. It is only as we study the letter as a foundation and then go within and let the Spirit reveal itself from within that the complete work is accomplished. We know when we have some measure of truth by the fruitage in our experience. If we have less fear of the world and of the conditions of the world and the people of the world, then we have some measure of spiritual consciousness. If we have a greater reliance on the invisible, then we have some greater measure of spiritual consciousness. A student wrote me this morning, at least I received the letter this morning, that there was a letdown in her experience after our work in Chicago, because she had been resting on a cloud. And wouldn't it be nice if we had something more substantial than a cloud to hold us up? And then immediately she caught the mistake of what she had been writing and said, oh, I see, we aren't even entitled to a cloud to rest on, since he hangeth the world on nothing. Do you see that? Do you see that as long as you're clinging to things or to thoughts, you're still clinging to something in the realm of effect? And that's all right. That's all right in our development, but it is not the fullness of the Spirit. When we come to the fullness of the Spirit, then is when we are neither depending on people, on things, nor on thoughts, because we have attained some measure of the realization, I am eternally being. In other words, I am being this minute. I am alive this minute. I have eaten. I have had my drink. I have had my supply this minute. Well, that's all I'm interested in. I am this minute. Then, as you live in that consciousness, each minute follows the other, and you find you're always able to say, I am living. I am being. I am being fed, housed, clothed, supplied, maintained, sustained. I am joyous. I am free. It's always a continuous state of I am. Now, you see, there's nothing there to rest back on, not even a cloud, not even a thought. It's just the realization, I have no need of resting on anything. I am being. I am this very moment. Now, is there anything in the external world that can interfere with that I amness? Is there anything external to our being? Why, the Master says, nothing can enter from without that defileth or maketh a lie. There is no such thing as a law, no such thing as a rule, no such thing as a person or a condition that can enter our consciousness to defile or make a lie unless we permit it. Now, in our pre-student days, that was not true. We did not then know that the kingdom of God was within us and that all life flowed out from us, and therefore we learned to be fearful of people, of conditions, and of circumstances. Right from infancy, we were taught not to fall down because you'll get hurt, and not to talk to strangers because they might kidnap you. We were always taught the power of fear and the power of evil in the world. Never were we taught the first commandment. And even when we were taught to recite the first commandment, we were at the same moment told not to believe it. Now then, from the beginning of your truth student days, you began to have the teaching that the Spirit alone is real, or the Spirit alone is power. Now, the Spirit is invisible. The Spirit is intangible to human sense. No one can ever see, hear, taste, touch, or smell the Spirit. It is really a nothing, a no thing, a nothingness so far as human values or powers are concerned. And therefore, it is only in the degree that your confidence, your assurance, your faith in the invisible increases that your fear of the visible decreases. Then you know that you are attaining spiritual consciousness. You have less concern for the things of the outer world. You have a greater degree of assurance or confidence that there is a power within you greater than all of the appearances in the world. As you come higher in this study and appreciation of the Spirit, you don't feel that there is a power within you greater than the evils of the world. Then you begin to see that there is a power within you that dispels the illusory appearances of the world. That begins an entirely new realm of consciousness. When you begin to perceive, as the Master said, no, do not rejoice that the devils are subject unto you through my name, but that your name is written in heaven. In other words, do not rejoice that you have now found a great power called God that is going to do things to the evils of the world. Begin to rejoice now that you have learned that this is the kingdom of heaven. This is the kingdom of heaven. Your names are writ in heaven. You are living and moving and having your being in heaven. What now of the evils of the world? There aren't any. There aren't any. When you go to the movies and you see all these people shot down, you don't go into grief because you know that the moment the camera stops moving, all these dead people are going to get up from the ground again. Nothing has happened to them except in a play. And so it is you begin to perceive that nothing is really happening to these people of the world. The mere fact that there are more people on earth today than ever doesn't mean there's more of God. The fact that there were less people 1,000 years ago doesn't mean there was less of God. It merely means that human sense has multiplied itself. But if you could look into the consciousness of those who have really understood the spiritual teachings of this age, you would find that the spiritual universe has likewise multiplied itself. And there is more of spirit evident on earth today than ever before in history. Now, the human world is a victim of its beliefs. And that is why the 91st Psalm says, 1,000 shall fall at my left, 10,000 at thy right. That's why the Master says that unless you abide in this word and let this word abide in you, you will be as a branch that withereth, a branch that is cut off. For the simple reason that human belief demonstrates itself. And as long as you entertain a selfhood apart from God, as long as you entertain the possibility of external conditions and persons being able to erroneously influence you or affect your life, you will certainly fulfill that human belief. From the moment that you begin to perceive that he that is within you is greater than these beliefs and appearances in the world, the moment you begin to perceive that this spirit within you is the meat, the wine, the water, the law of resurrection unto you, it is your supply. You don't have to concern yourself for the meat of the world. You don't have to concern yourself for the protective measures of the world. Once you begin to perceive that, you are then advancing in spiritual consciousness, and your life will show it forth. A most beautiful experience happened during our Seattle work when a group of students came and said that many of them that day had noted, and then afterward this comment had been made, just look at the people in this class and realize what they looked like 3 years ago. Most of these people had been in classes periodically, 2, 3, 4 times a year up in the Seattle-Portland area for the last 4 years. And all of a sudden, some of them became aware of each other's appearance and of the changes that had happened in them in these past years. Certainly, not so much from what they learned in any particular class, but from the cumulative effects of imbibing this truth of the kingdom of God on earth, the kingdom of God as here and now. This abiding for 3 or 4 years in the realization that the evils of the world are not real. They're only real to those who indulge them. They're only real to those who continue to fear them. But those fears drop away in this particular thing. And that is why I say, don't expect too much of what you learn in a particular class. No matter to what height the class may go, Only certain individuals in that class will attain the heights of it. And the reason is that those who have been coming up and up and up over the years, higher and higher in consciousness, will be able to assimilate and to fulfill the highest level of consciousness attained in the class. The others will not. Their time will come in either future classes or in future days of their own study and unfoldment. One of the greatest lessons I've learned in my work is that the benefits of spiritual teaching and living is a cumulative one. It is something that takes place as you imbibe these truths, live with them, meditate on them, practice them, that over a period of time they begin to show forth their fruitage in your experience. Healings, individual healings of physical, mental, moral, financial things may come instantly. But don't even be too excited about those, because they're the lesser things of this work. The greater things is the development of this spiritual consciousness. Now, actually, time isn't an element, but the unfolding of consciousness is an element. But it is the unfolding of consciousness that appears to us as the passage of time. We have a spiritual elevation today and another one tomorrow, and then we think of the 24 hours that elapsed. The 24 hours that elapsed had nothing to do with it. It was the period of unfoldment taking place within us that determined the experience and the depth of the experience. And so it is we know whether we are unfolding spiritually in proportion as we are losing the fear and confidence in the things of the external world and are gaining a greater awareness, reliance, dependence, and demonstration on the spiritual realities within. In proportion as we know that I am this moment. That's not dependent on you. That's not dependent on even a God. It's just dependent on the fact that because God is, I am. I already am. I am this moment. And if I abide in my I amness, that will be the perpetual state of my being. The very moment that I hope or expect a good in the future, even if that future is 1 hour from now, I lose the benefits of my I amness. I make an impossibility of spiritual demonstration. There can be no spiritual demonstration in the future. All spiritual demonstration has to take place now. It has to take place in the realization of amness, not will-be-ness, or should be, or deserve to be. All spiritual demonstration has its foundation in the two words, I am. That which I am seeking, I am. All that God is, I am. All that I should ever be, I am. Eternality is the present state of my being. Immortality is the present state of my being. Infinity is the present state of my being. Why? Because all that God is, I am. I and the Father are one. Son, all that I have is thine. What is I? Within yourself say it, I. I. All that I is, you are. And that I is God. That I is the infinity of being. That I is your consciousness. That I is the creative principle of your experience. And all that I is, you are. And that I is right now. That I is amming right now. I am means right now. I am. Now are we the sons of God. Now are we. When we awaken to that truth, we will see ourselves as we are now. Not as we should be, as we are now in truth. As we awaken to what we are now, we will find that right now we are all-inclusive being, and that we include the infinity, the infinite nature of God, the infinity of life, truth, love, spirit, wholeness, completeness. Do not try to translate that into terms of dollars or houses or employments. Be satisfied to keep your conversation in heaven, and then witness the unfolding of spiritual reality as your daily experience. Why does not eating wheat promote longevity? Because the way wheat is manufactured or processed today, it contains a poison. And every time you take wheat into your system, you take poison in. It gets out of your system quickly, but the next time you eat it, you bring it right back in again. And then beside that, all of the food value has been removed from the wheat before you get it to eat, so that you only get the husks. All of the food value of wheat is in the wheat germ or kernel of the wheat that is sold in not even sold in grocery stores or markets, but in health food stores. So that the wheat actually that you put into your system consists of but two things: bulk and poison. And so it has been found medically, I'm speaking, not spiritually. It has been found medically. There are many doctors who are doing marvelous healing works on the physical plane, merely by taking wheat away from people and replacing it with vitamins and minerals to take the place of that which should really be in the wheat products. And some of these doctors are making very great reputations for themselves purely by taking wheat away from people. So that is the reason for that. It has nothing to do with our spiritual development, remember. It is merely a side comment on the fact that physically even there are helps for us if we are awake to them. Now, let us say that in a certain profession one is required to perform everything from memory. So is memorizing a function of the human mind, or is it a spiritual unfoldment? And what should be the approach to assure no slips of memory? To begin with, memory, as we ordinarily understand it, is a human function, a function of the human mind. We train ourselves to it. But the realization of God as the only mind is that which gives us what we will call a memory, but which isn't a memory at all. It's the unfolding of a storehouse of wisdom. Everything that has to do with memorizing or the knowing of facts or the ability to retain facts can be brought into higher unfoldment through the realization of God as individual mind or consciousness. The moment we realize that all faculties are faculties of God rather than our own, we begin to lose our fear. Do you not see that if you thought that wisdom, knowledge, was dependent on your brain, that the moment something happened to your brain, you'd lose your knowledge or your wisdom? Do you not see that if you were to make your knowledge dependent upon yourself, you would be limiting all of your knowledge to your personal ability? Whereas, the moment you begin to understand that all knowledge, all wisdom is embraced in God, and God has the power of expressing it. Now let me show you something about this metaphysical thing. Some of you have undoubtedly been taught that you express God. And of course there is nothing further from the truth than that. There isn't anybody on the face of the earth that expresses God. Only God expresses God. God expresses itself. You may be that expression, but it is God expressing itself that is you. The government is upon his shoulder. There is no responsibility upon you to express God or to express God qualities. Matter of fact, you couldn't do it. You cannot be loving. You cannot be just. You cannot be merciful. You cannot be kind. You cannot be sweet. You cannot be gentle. It's just an impossibility. Only God can be these things. And God is those things, and you are the vehicle or instrument through which or as which God expresses those things. But all the glory belongs to God, not to you or to me. Jesus says, "Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven." Now, the moment that someone puts a responsibility upon you to be more loving or more generous or more grateful or more kind or more cooperative, just know this: they are not functioning from the spiritual level of life, but from the psychological level, which is always one of self-improvement with a small s, as if you really could improve yourself. Oh, to a certain extent, it can be done, but always on the human level. As a matter of fact, the moment you realize that God is love, and God is expressing love, God is life, and God is expressing life, God is soul, and God is expressing itself, God is infinite wisdom, and God is forever expressing itself, there's no more responsibility on your shoulder to memorize, no more responsibility on your shoulder to take any personal responsibility for anything. You relax and you let the government be upon its shoulder. Then you only become obedient to the directions given you. In other words, when someone calls upon you for help, the responsibility is yours to sit down and go through whatever motions of giving help you understand. But the responsibility is on God to bring about the healing or help that is necessary. If you are called upon to sell merchandise or to design merchandise, be assured of this: you are only called upon to go through the motions. He performeth that which is appointed for you to do. He perfecteth that which concerneth you. You merely go through the motions. You merely come up on a platform if you're sent for, and you sit there or stand there and then open your mouth and let something come out. But it's God's responsibility as to what comes out. You might know this, that sitting right here where I am, that it isn't I who am electing what to say to you or what to teach or what to reveal. It is you drawing it out from me at your level of consciousness. And there are days when you are in a higher state of upliftment and you draw forth a higher form of unfoldment. My responsibility is to so live as to keep myself in tune with that infinite. And then whatever must come forth will come forth. It must come forth. You who are here were brought here by the Spirit of God to receive something. But you weren't here to receive it from me. You were to receive it from God. You never knew me. You never asked for me. You, sometime in your life, have turned to God for unfoldment, for wisdom. And God has led you here to receive it from God. Do you not see that? My responsibility is only as an instrument. If I do not maintain myself worthily as an instrument, I will be removed, but that will not affect your demonstration, because you are not looking to me. Not even while you're sitting here are you looking to me. You are looking to God. You came here, you prayed to God for truth. You prayed to God for light. You prayed to God for spiritual wisdom. And you were just led here to an instrument through which that could come. You no more need that instrument than you need Jesus Christ. And you know you don't need him, because he said, if I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Now, you know he knew what he was talking about. And so it is. Never believe for a moment that anybody here needs me. All anyone here needs is the grace of God. And as long as they're praying for the grace of God, their teaching and their teacher will appear every single moment of their unfoldment. Jesus has gone from the scene, Buddha has gone, Lao Tse has gone, in our modern days Mrs. Eddy has gone, Mrs. Fillmore went, but still we go on with spiritual teaching, and we always will. God will never be without a messenger. God will never be without an instrument through which to unfold itself to human consciousness. God is forever expressing itself. We are not expressing God. God is expressing itself. Never believe that you are an expression of God, always that you are expressing God. Always understand that God is expressing itself, and the government is upon God's shoulder to reveal itself to you. All you have to do is to remain steadfast in praying to God to reveal itself to you. And then, if a messenger is needed, God will raise up a messenger for you. If not, God will reveal itself in your individual consciousness without the help of any human instrument. Now, so it is. Never believe that you need a brain or a heart or a liver or a lung, because if you do, you will be putting your fate in an effect. Never believe that you need a person. You don't, because you'll be placing your faith in an effect. All of you need, all that you will ever need, is divine grace. And when you have divine grace, you'll have a spiritual teacher or teaching, you'll have your memory, you'll have your wisdom, you'll have your life, you'll have your inventive skill, you'll have your musical skill, your art, your literature, whatever it is that is your particular experience on this plane, you will have, as long as your total reliance is on the infinite invisible, as long as you are not placing yourself at the mercy of man whose breath is in his nostril, or some effect, whether that effect may be a brain, a heart, a liver, or lung. Do not make your life dependent on the body. Make your body dependent upon life. Understand that as long as God, life, exists, your body will exist, because God or life is the creative principle of your body. God, life, is the animating principle. It is God that moves your body. It is not your body that affects life. It is your life that affects your body. That is also making a transition from material sense to spiritual consciousness. In material sense, it is your body that determines your life. In spiritual consciousness, if they destroyed your body, your life would raise it up again in 3 days, because your body is an emanation of life. Your body is governed by life. Every organ and function of your body is maintained and sustained by life. And that's why, actually, we go through these changes in human experience from infancy to childhood, and then to adulthood, on to maturity. And all of these are unfolding states of consciousness. Now, as we leave childhood, we come into the creative period of life. That is the period in which we have or can have children. And that is a function of that particular state of consciousness or period of time. Then comes the time when that particular faculty is removed from us. Not because we're aging, not because we're getting old, but because we're entering another plane of consciousness, another state of consciousness where we have different functions, different faculties, different meanings to our life, where we have, just as we left play toys with childhood, so we leave creating children with this maturity. And as children took the place of play toys, so now at this particular period of life, does something else take the place of rearing children? You see, this is an unfolding of God appearing as states and stages of consciousness. And as we leave behind us one era, one experience we go on into higher ones. The trouble has been that people have seen these changing of physical organs and functions as if there was some kind of a loss to them, as if there was some kind of a taking away of some divine right or other, whereas actually it was as progressive a state as leaving childhood. Nobody had more trouble in leaving childhood than I did, because I refused to give up Santa Claus. And I'm not fooling. I was very serious about it. When my mother found it necessary to convince me there was none, I still insisted on hanging up my stocking in case she might be wrong. Santa Claus meant something very real to me, because he gave me the things, evidently, that I wanted. And I wanted to keep on wanting them, too. And we all do. We all want to continue. That is the state of inertia. We all want to continue doing what we're doing now for fear that the next experience won't be as good as our present one. Oh, it's better. Much better things happened after we left our toy days. But you'd be surprised how much better the things are that are ahead of us when we stop leaving some of our human experiences behind us. Now then, just to sum up this particular point, remember, God is forever expressing itself. And God is expressing itself as your life, mind, soul, body, as your memory, as your faculty of music, or your faculty of literature, or your faculty of invention, or your faculty of science, faculty of discovery. God is expressing itself in those infinite ways, and all we can do is be an instrument. Now, how do we do specific work for a specific problem? That subject is covered under the subjects of the titles of treatment, prayer, meditation, communion in all of the writings. Actually, we have been doing specific work for specific problems at every one of our sessions. How to do specific work? Through treatment, through prayer, through communion, through meditation. You learn to take each problem and then drop the problem and begin to understand the truth about it. Every treatment begins with the word God. This subject takes up so much time or space that it would require the writing again of 20 books. So I'm going to have to say to this, take up the subject of treatment, prayer, meditation, and communion in all of the writings, and then you will see how each problem is handled. Actually, every problem of human experience would be handled if we did our meditations in the morning before leaving home and at night before retiring, and continued them until we felt that inner click. Then we would find that there are no specific problems, that we would have only opportunities for activity throughout our days. Let's just stop for a few minutes. Yes? Now, with every experience that comes to us in any discordant sense, you might ask yourself this question: has it something to do with I, me, or mine? And very often you will find that just answering that solves the entire problem. You will find that most problems drop away the very moment that you recognize that they are personal. Why? God governs this universe. God is the law, the substance, the activity of this universe. The responsibility for this universe is on God's shoulder. And the moment you permit the word I, me, or mine to enter, you are interfering with the prerogative of God, and you recognize it. And then you say, oh, wait a minute. I have been allowing myself to get involved in this instead of letting God operate. Or, does this concern me or mine? Then also it must be a function of God. Anything that enables you to drop the personal sense of responsibility will help to dissolve the problem. And I have found this helpful, that the moment I found myself getting tangled or embroiled in some problem, that if I could bring to conscious remembrance, now wait a minute, does this involve me or mine? Yes, it does. Well, then what have I got to do with it? And I have felt a sense of release, a relaxing from it. You see, there is nothing concerning me or mine that is not under the jurisdiction of God. Then why do I have to be concerned with it? Is there anything that can enter your life or mine for which there isn't a God law, a God substance, a God activity? Is there anything that can enter our experience that couldn't better be handled by this infinite invisible than we personally could handle it? Is there anything that can come into our experience that the all-knowing mind doesn't understand and that the all-loving love doesn't provide for? And so you see, the very moment we say I, me, mine, the problem becomes a little bit ridiculous. And in that degree, we are enabled to release ourselves from it and watch the divine energy, the divine influence, the divine wisdom, the divine will. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And this actually acts as a marvelous treatment. Just the realization, is this concerning I, me, or mine? And then that sense of release that comes. Along with this comes the reminder of yesterday morning. Are we turning to God, Spirit, for something that is of a purely material nature? And if we are, can we expect an answer? In other words, instead of taking a material condition to God, let us drop the material condition from our thought in the realization of God's spiritual provision, and then see the solution of the problem by its dissolution. Do you follow that? If I were to pray for a book, I do not expect that I would get it. If I were to pray for wisdom, I would most normally see it appear as a book from which I would gain that wisdom. Not necessarily the wisdom could come directly to my consciousness without a book, but I do know that from the past, in my earlier years when this Infinite Way message was unfolding, and many things were coming to me that I couldn't accept or believe or realize, that I prayed and prayed and prayed for wisdom. I prayed for light. I prayed for illumination. And what happened was that I was usually led into bookstores and found books on the shelf. I have found many books there for 5 cents a piece that have meant more to me than a whole library full of books, because I was led right to the place where that book was at the particular time when it was needed in my experience. You'll never know how hard I have prayed in my life for wisdom, spiritual light, for an understanding of God, because I had a void, I had a vacuum, I had a lack. And I had to pray hard. And you'd be surprised how many wonderful books came my way, and how many wonderful teachers, how many wonderful people who had something to contribute from their experience or from their storehouse of wisdom and knowledge. You'd be surprised how many different directions wisdom has come into my experience, not praying for books or teachers, but praying for light, for wisdom, for guidance, for grace, for spiritual truth, and then finding the most wonderful books placed in my hands, or meeting the most wonderful people to share some of their experiences with me. And so it is. Don't pray for the material manifestation of anything. Pray for the spiritual reality. Pray for divine grace. Pray for spiritual consciousness, spiritual illumination. Pray for an understanding of spiritual law. Pray for the grace to live in accord with spiritual law. Keep your prayers entirely on a spiritual level, and you'll be surprised how many times they will appear in books, people, dollar bills, homes, or whatever else the human need may be at the moment. But since we do not know what things we have need of, we really don't know. There isn't anyone in this room who knows what they need an hour from now. You may have a concept, you may have an idea of something you believe you need. That may not be your need at all. Maybe something far different than that, just as no one can possibly outline the way their lives, the direction their lives should take. Why? Because most people are living misfit lives. In other words, they have fitted their lives into their old human scheme, and now they're trying to live spiritually, but still keep the pattern of their old human existence, and not realizing that that pattern is being broken up. So it is, to pray for spiritual wisdom will break up the material pattern and form this new temple. This new temple not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Remember that the object of our work is the revelation of John. That new temple, that new body, that new human experience, but not the one made with hands, not the one that we fashioned out of the activity of our minds or human will or human destiny, but the breaking of that pattern and the perceiving of the vision of the mount. There is a temple not made with hands, not humanly conceived. There is a body and there is a life for each one of us that has nothing to do with the life that we have humanly conceived it to be, or the pattern in which we have molded ourselves. There is a spiritual life for us. There is a spiritual pattern for us. We will never know it. We will never understand it, while we are trying to use spirit merely to glorify the human pattern that we have already placed ourselves in. We must be willing for the pattern of our lives to be broken, just as the seed is willing for itself to be broken and destroyed when it is placed in the ground, in order that the new life may emanate from it. We also must be willing for our sense of life to break up in order that the new mold, the new life, may appear. We had this experience in Portland. You have undoubtedly read something of it in the monthly letter, in which this unfoldment came that we are not as far from world peace as the world believes. We are much closer to it. We are so close to it that most of the people in this room will live to see, on this plane of life, world peace as an established thing. It is going to come first in the outlawing of atomic and hydrogen weapons, and it will be followed within 3 to 4 years by the outlawing. I don't mean 3 to 4 years from now, but I mean 3 or 4 years after the outlawing of the atomic weapons will come the outlawing of all war. But the outlawing of it will not be the means of its ending. It will be that the new state of consciousness will produce the outlawing of it. And that new state of consciousness will come as we ourselves come into the realization that we would rather suffer the loss of our own physical lives than to be the instruments for the taking of the lives of others. In other words, the moment we agree within ourselves, that it would be far better for that bomb to be thrown at us and our physical sense of life be destroyed than that we throw it at anyone else and lose our souls in accepting the belief of death for others. In that very moment, this new era will be introduced on earth. It will not be a matter of a campaign or a crusade. It will not be a matter of publishing it in a paper and expecting other people to believe it. It will only be a matter as you and I agree within our own being that we would much rather be hit with a bomb than throw it, that we would rather another country throw it than we throw it, that we preserve the integrity of our souls rather than of our physical bodies. In that very moment, those forces are set abroad in the world that will appear outwardly and humanly as the outlawing. And those who outlaw it, of course, will be working from their very highest human motives, not realizing that in the moment that we gave up our lives, we assured the end of war. And so it is for today. Thank you.